Danny McGuire came home from work to find his lovely bride sitting in the living room, still in her bathrobe. "Kate, my wife," he says, "what is the matter? You're still in your robe." "Ah, Danny," says she, "'tis poorly I'm feeling. I didn't know what to do, so I called Doc McDonald." "I'll need a specimen," he said, and hung up. "Danny, I don't know what a specimen is." "Ah, lass, I don't know either, but if you haul yourself up the stairs to Mrs. Murphy, she'll be able to tell you." Off goes Kate, bounding up the stairs. Soon Danny hears a horrible thump, bang, and a hell of a crash. Opening his door, he sees Kate piled up at the bottom of the landing. "Kate, whatever happened?" "I told Mrs. Murphy what the doc said, and she told me to just piss in a bottle. So I told her to shit in her hat, and the fight was on." A man was walking in the mountains, just enjoying the scenery, when he stepped too close to the edge of the mountain and started to fall. In desperation, he reached out and grabbed a limb of a gnarly old tree hanging onto the side of the cliff. Full of fear, he assessed his situation. He was about 100 feet down a sheer cliff and about 900 feet from the floor of the canyon below. If he should slip again, he'd plummet to his death. Full of fear, he cries out, "Help me!" But there was no answer. Again and again he cried out, but to no avail. Finally, he yelled, "Is anybody up there?" A deep voice replied, "Yes, I'm up here." "Who is it?" "It's the Lord. Can you help me?" "Yes, I can help." "Help me. Let go." Looking around, the man became full of panic. "What?" "Let go. I will catch you. Is anybody else up there?" An American, a Scot, and a Canadian were in a terrible car accident. They were all brought to the same emergency room, but all three of them died before they arrived. Just as they were about to put the toe tag on the American, he stirred and opened his eyes. Astonished, the doctors and nurses present asked him what happened. "Well," said the American, "I remember the crash, and then there was a beautiful light, and then the Canadian and the Scot and I were standing at the gates of heaven. St. Peter approached us and said that we were all too young to die and that for a donation of $50, we could return to the earth. So, of course, I pulled out my wallet and gave him the $50, and the next thing I knew, I was back here." "That's amazing," said one of the doctors. "But what happened to the other two?" "Well, the Scot was still haggling over the price, and the Canadian was waiting for the government to pay for his." Stevie Wonder and Jack Nicklaus are in a bar. Nicklaus turns to Wonder and says, "How is the singing career going?" Stevie Wonder says, "Not too bad. The latest album has gone in the top 10, so all in all, I think it is pretty good. By the way, how's the golf?" Nicklaus replies, "Not too bad. I'm not winning as much as I used to, but I'm still making a bit of money. I've had some problems with my swing, but I think I have got that right now." Stevie Wonder says, "I always find that when my swing goes wrong, I need to stop playing for a while and not think about it. Then the next time I play, it seems to be all right." Jack Nicklaus says, "You play golf?" Stevie Wonder says, "Yes, I've been playing for years." And Nicklaus says, "But I thought you were blind. How can you play golf if you're blind?" He replies, "I get my caddy to stand in the middle of the fairway, and he calls to me. I listen for the sound of his voice and play the ball towards him, and when I get to where the ball lands, the caddy moves to the green or further down the fairway, and again I play the ball towards his voice." "But how do you putt?" says Nicklaus. "Well," says Stevie, "I get my caddy to lean down in front of the ball and call to me with his head on the ground, and I just play the ball towards his voice." Nicklaus says, "What is your handicap?" Stevie says, "Well, I play from scratch." Nicklaus is incredulous, and he says to Stevie Wonder, "We must play a game sometime." Wonder replies, "Well, people don't take me seriously, so I only ever play for money, and actually I never play for less than $100,000 a hole." Nicklaus thinks about it and says, "Okay, I'm game for that. When would you like to play?" Stevie Wonder turns around and says, "I don't mind. Any night suits me." A woman went to visit her husband in prison one afternoon. They sat together in the visiting room, talking quietly for a while. He looked tired, worn out, and not nearly as cheerful as usual. When visiting time ended, the woman hugged him goodbye and walked toward the exit. On her way out, she stopped beside one of the correction officers. "You really shouldn't make my husband work so hard," she said. The officer looked surprised. Work hard. Yes, she replied. He's exhausted. He looks completely worn out. The officer laughed and shook his head. Ma'am, are you kidding? He said. Your husband doesn't do any hard work here. Most days he just eats, sleeps, and stays in his cell. The woman frowned. That can't be right, she said. The officer crossed his arms. I promise you, he's not on any work detail. He doesn't lift boxes, clean floors, or do anything like that. The wife looked even more confused. But he told me he's been working every night, she said. The officer suddenly became serious. What exactly did he say? The wife replied, he just told me he's been digging a tunnel for months. A husband and wife were sitting together at a bar one evening, trying to enjoy a quiet drink. At the next table, there was a very drunk man who had clearly been there for quite a while. For a few minutes, everything was calm. Then, without warning, the drunk suddenly stood up, raised one hand in the air, and shouted, "Attention, everyone!" The whole bar went silent. People turned to look at him, wondering what he was about to say. Instead of making an announcement, the drunk let out a loud fart that echoed through the room. The wife immediately turned red with embarrassment and looked down at the table. Her husband, annoyed and offended, turned toward the drunk and said, "Excuse me, but you just farted before my wife." The drunk looked at him, confused for a second. Then he shrugged and replied, "I'm sorry, I didn't know it was her turn." As soon as the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon, the young bride called her mother, who lived a couple of hours away. "How did everything go?" her mom asked. "Oh, mother," she began, "the honeymoon was wonderful. So romantic, we had a terrific time. But, mother, on our way back, Andy started using really horrible language. It's stuff I'd never heard before. Really terrible four-letter words. You gotta come get me and take me home." "Please, mother," the new bride sobbed over the telephone. "But, honey," the mother countered, "what four-letter words?" "I can't tell you, mother. They're too awful. Come get me, please." "Darling, you must tell me what has gotten you so upset." "Tell mother what four-letter words he used." Still sobbing, the bride said, "Mother, words like dust, wash, iron, and cook." A police officer pulled over an elderly woman named Margaret for speeding. She rolled down her window and gave the young officer a sweet smile. "Ma'am, do you know how fast you were going?" the officer asked. Margaret squinted at him. "Oh, son, at my age, I don't even bother looking at the speedometer anymore. I just try to keep up with traffic." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, there is no traffic." She grinned. "Well then, I must be winning." The officer chuckled, but remained professional. "License and registration, please." Margaret began rummaging through her purse, pulling out a pack of tissues, some hard candies, a sewing kit, and what looked like a 20-year-old coupon for prune juice. "Oh dear," she muttered. "I seem to have left my license at home." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's a problem, ma'am." Margaret sighed. "Yes, I suppose it is. But to be fair, I don't really need a license." The officer frowned. "Why not?" She leaned in closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "Because I don't technically own this car." The officer immediately straightened up. "Wait, whose car is this?" Margaret waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, I don't know his name, but I'm pretty sure he was the guy I borrowed it from at the gas station." The officer stepped back. "Ma'am, are you telling me you stole this car?" Margaret gasped. "Well, if you put it that way, it sounds bad." The officer quickly called for backup. Within minutes, several police cars surrounded Margaret's car. A senior officer approached and asked, "Ma'am, may I see some ID?" Margaret smiled sweetly and handed him her driver's license. The officer blinked. "Ma'am, this is valid. And this is your car." Margaret patted the dashboard. "Of course it is. Been driving it for years." The first officer stammered, But you told me you stole it." Margaret grinned. "Oh, officer, you young folks don't listen, do you? I also bet I never told you I was speeding either." The senior officer sighed, shook his head, and waved her off. "Have a nice day, ma'am." Margaret chuckled to herself as she drove away, muttering, "Works every time." Two nuns are walking down the street when they notice that a man is following them. Sister Michael, the older and wiser nun, says to the young and naive Sister Patrick, "See that crossroad ahead? You go left, and I'll go right. You can't follow us both. We'll meet back at the Abbey." So the sisters part, and the man follows Sister Michael. Some time later, Sister Patrick is anxiously waiting at the Abbey when Sister Michael returns alone. "Thank the Lord you are all right," exclaims Sister Patrick. "But what happened to that man?" "Well," replies Sister Michael, "after a few minutes, I stopped and pulled on my dress." Sister Patrick stares in shock. Then continues Sister Michael, "He stopped and pulled down his trousers." Sister Patrick gasps, "Oh, sister, why would you let him do that?" "Because," explains Sister Michael, "a nun with her dress up can run faster than a man with his trousers down." A man was driving his motor caravan through town when suddenly he saw the bright flash of a traffic camera. He frowned and checked his speedometer. "That's strange," he thought. "I wasn't speeding." Curious, he turned around, went back around the block, and drove past the same camera again, this time even slower. Flash. Now he was really confused. He circled the block once more and passed the camera at a crawl. Flash. The man started laughing. "There must be something wrong with that thing," he said to himself. To prove it, he drove around a fourth time, barely touching the accelerator. Flash. By now, he was enjoying himself. He imagined some poor traffic officer looking at all those photos of him, driving slower and slower. So he went around one last time, rolling past the camera at almost walking speed, grinning as the flash went off again. Flash. 2 weeks later, 5 envelopes arrived in the mail. Still smiling, the man opened them, expecting to see some ridiculous speeding tickets. But instead, he found 5 fines for driving without a seatbelt. 2 clueless friends decided to go moose hunting for the very first time. Seeking advice, they stopped by a local gun shop, where a mischievous clerk decided to play a prank on the obvious beginners. He sold them a 2-person female moose costume and a mating whistle. "Here's the secret," the clerk smiled. "Both of you get inside the suit and blow this whistle. When a male moose comes running, just unzip the costume and shoot him. It's foolproof." Excited by the strategy, the duo headed into the dense forest and squeezed into the suit. 5 minutes after the guy in the front started blowing the mating call, a gargantuan bull moose emerged from the trees, looking highly aroused and heading straight for them. "Perfect," whispered the guy in the back. "Unzip the suit so we can bag this thing." The front guy pulled frantically at the mechanism. "I can't. The zipper is completely jammed." "What?" The back guy panicked. "Then what the hell are we going to do?" The front guy slowly bent forward and replied, "Well, I'm going to start nibbling on some grass, but if I were you, buddy, I'd brace myself." She found herself seated next to a nice priest, whom she asked, "Excuse me, Father, could I ask a favor?" "Of course, my child. What can I do for you?" "Here's the problem. I bought myself a new sophisticated hair remover gadget for which I paid an enormous sum of money. I have really gone over the declaration limits, and I am worried that they will confiscate it at customs. Do you think you could hide it under your cassock?" "Of course I could, my child, but you must realize that I cannot lie." "You have such an honest face, Father. I am sure they will not ask you any questions," and she gave him the hair remover. The aircraft arrived at its destination. When the priest presented himself to customs, he was asked, "Father, do you have anything to declare?" "From the top of my head to my sash, I have nothing to declare, my son," he replied. Finding this reply strange, the customs officer asked, "And from the sash down, what do you have?" The priest replied, "I have there a marvelous little instrument designed for use by women, but it has never been used." Breaking out in laughter, the customs officer said, "Go ahead, Father. Next." For several years, a man was having an affair with an Italian woman. One night, she confided in him that she was pregnant. Not wanting to ruin his reputation or his marriage, he paid her a large sum of money if she would go to Italy to secretly have the child. If she stayed in Italy to raise the child, he would also provide child support until the child turned 18. She agreed, but asked how he would know when the baby was born. To keep it discreet, he told her to simply mail him a postcard and write spaghetti on the back. He would then arrange for the child support payments to begin. One day, about 9 months later, he came home to his confused wife. "Honey," she said, "you received a very strange postcard today." "Oh, really? Let me see," he said. The wife gave it to him and watched as her husband read the card, turned white, and fainted. On the card was written, "Spaghetti, spaghetti, spaghetti. 2 with meatballs, 1 without. Send extra sauce." A young, good-looking woman married an old man. The marriage was pretty good except for the bedroom. The old man just couldn't please her. One day, they decided to go to the doctor. The woman told the doctor, "No matter how long or often we try, he just can't please me." The doctor said, "I have a solution for your problem. You guys have to find a younger man and take him with you into the bedroom." The old man was a little angry. "What the hell is a young man supposed to do?" he asked. The doctor replied, "The younger man will wave a towel at your wife while you guys are intimate." So they found a young, good-looking guy who was willing to wave a towel at the old man's wife while he was trying to please her. They tried over and over, but he still couldn't please his wife. After many tries, his wife suggested swapping the men's roles. The old man wasn't very happy about it, but agreed. So the young guy got on his wife, and they started having intercourse. The old man waved the towel at his wife and watched them. After a minute, his wife was finally pleased, and the old guy told the young man, "This is how you're supposed to wave the white flag, you fucking moron." A young man was having dinner with his parents one evening, and his mother placed a big portion of broccoli on his plate. He stared at it with disgust and pushed it aside. "Eat your broccoli," his mother said. "No way," he replied. "I hate broccoli." His mother sighed. "You're old enough to know better. Just eat it." But he crossed his arms and refused. His father leaned over with a serious look and whispered something quietly in his ear. A second later, the young man's eyes widened. Without another word, he grabbed his fork, ate every piece of broccoli on the plate, and quickly left the table. His mother watched in amazement. "What on earth did you tell him?" she asked. The father smiled proudly and said, "I told him that if he didn't eat his broccoli, his Mickey wouldn't grow." For a moment, his wife just stared at him. Then, without hesitation, she stood up and slapped him hard across the face. The husband grabbed his cheek in shock. "What was that for?" he asked. She glared at him and said, "For not eating your broccoli when you were young." A woman walked into a small neighborhood pharmacy one afternoon and went straight to the counter. The pharmacist looked up with a polite smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you?" The woman leaned in slightly and lowered her voice. "I need something strong," she said. "A poison that will kill my husband, but make it look like he died of natural causes." The pharmacist's smile disappeared immediately. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "I absolutely cannot help you with anything like that. What you're asking for is illegal, dangerous, and completely unacceptable." The woman remained calm. The pharmacist continued, "In fact, I'm going to have to call the police and report this conversation." Without saying a word, the woman reached into her purse and pulled out a small photograph. She placed it on the counter and slid it toward him. The pharmacist hesitated, then picked it up and looked at it. His eyes widened. In the photo was the woman's husband, clearly making love to the pharmacist's wife. For a few seconds, the pharmacist said nothing. He stared at the picture, then slowly looked back at the woman. His expression changed completely. He cleared his throat, folded the photo, and handed it back to her. Then he leaned across the counter and said, "Oh, you should have told me you had a prescription." One day, a wife became suspicious and decided to check her husband's phone. As she scrolled through his contacts, 3 names immediately caught her attention. The tender one, the amazing one, lady of my dreams. Her face turned red with anger. Without wasting a second, she called the first number. To her surprise, her husband's mother answered. The wife felt a little embarrassed, but still suspicious, so she called the second number. This time, his sister picked up the phone. Now, feeling guilty, she took a deep breath and dialed the third number. A moment later, her own phone started ringing. The wife froze. Her anger disappeared instantly, and tears filled her eyes. She felt terrible for doubting such an innocent and loving husband. She cried so much that her eyes became swollen. To make up for her lack of trust, She apologized again and again, then gave him her entire month's salary as a gesture of regret. Her husband accepted the money with a calm smile. Later that day, he took the cash and bought a beautiful gift for his girlfriend, whose number was saved in his phone as Uncle Mike the mechanic. The husband comes home worried because he has a scratch on his chest caused by a fingernail from his mistress. Opens the door, seeing the cat asleep on the couch, and gives him a tremendous kick. The cat screams a loud meow and runs out the door. The wife comes in the living room and asks what happened, and he angrily replies, "This cat seems crazy. I was walking in, and just like that, he jumped on me and scratched me on the chest. Look at that hell of scratch." The woman replied, "You did very well. Today this fool bit my ass and gave me one hell of a hickey on my neck." Two friends were walking through the woods one afternoon, taking a shortcut back toward town. They were joking, laughing, and arguing about which path was faster, when suddenly they reached a small clearing. There, completely unexpectedly, they saw a beautiful woman sunbathing with no clothes on. One of the men froze for half a second, then suddenly turned around and ran as fast as he could in the opposite direction. His friend stared after him in confusion. "Hey," he shouted, "where are you going?" But the man kept running. After a few moments, his friend caught up with him, breathing heavily. "What on earth was that about?" he asked. "Why did you run away like that?" The first man looked nervous and embarrassed. "My mother always warned me," he said, "that if I ever looked at a naked woman, I'd turn to stone." His friend frowned. "And you believe that?" The man swallowed hard and replied, "Well, I already felt something getting hard."